Welcome to the Indicator podcast, where we talk to people working to make evaluation systems stronger. Today, we're getting into what most evaluation training skips: how you actually manage an evaluation once you've commissioned it. My guest is Tanya De La Garza, a founding partner of Indicate Impact, and probably one of the most experienced evaluation managers on the planet. From 2009 to 2020, she led the evaluation unit at CONEVAL, Mexico's National Council for the Evaluation of Social Development Policy, where she coordinated over 2,800 evaluations of public programs and policies. That's not a typo. Welcome, Tanya.
Hi, Dugan. Thank you so much. So when I share all about the 2,800, it's a lot. But
It's a lot.
a lot, yes.
So in evaluation, we talk a lot about methods and frameworks and how you actually do an evaluation. But managing an evaluation, holding the process together from inception to use, is a skill that doesn't really get that much attention. So let's fix that today. You coordinated more than 2,800 evaluations over 11 years at CONEVAL. At that scale, evaluation management isn't like a little artisanal craft. There has to be like a big system, right? What did you have to build and what did you have to let go of to make such a big system work?
So as I said, 2,800 is a lot. So that experience taught me something very quickly. When you're managing evaluation at national scales, evaluation management stops being a craft, like you said, and becomes institutional design. So 2,800 cannot run by it. They simply cannot run on individual brilliance or heroic effort. It has to run on systems. So what did we build on CONEVAL? First, governance. Clear annual evaluation cycles, defined roles, standard terms of reference, quality assurance checkpoints. Everybody knew what the process was and what was expected. Second, methodological discipline here, comparison matters. We create standardized evaluation approaches for certain types of programs so that findings could be compared across sectors and over time. Otherwise, you're just accumulating reports rather than building institutional learning. And the third point, and I think this is critical, we built follow-up mechanism. Evaluation was not considered complete when a report was delivered. It was only complete when findings entered decision-making. And what did I have to let go of? Honestly, the idea that every evaluation should be custom designed from scratch. In evaluation, we sometimes romanticize bespoke design. Complex matters, right? And of course it does. But at the scale, excessive customization becomes the enemy of timeliness, comparability, and ultimate use.
Wow. That's true, hey, but I'd never really thought of it like that. So you were just like churning these things out. And I guess if they're accurate and they're useful, they're serving their purpose. So, but tell me, one of the hardest moments in managing evaluations is when the evaluative process is going, let's call it sideways. The evaluator's off track or the data isn't coming in and the findings are going to be uncomfortable. You have to decide as the evaluation manager whether to intervene and how. What does a good intervention look like, and how do you distinguish it from meddling or interference?
Oh, this is such an important distinction between independence, because independence is often misunderstood, right? Some people think independent evaluation means that manager should step back entirely and avoid intervening. I don't agree with that. If any evaluation is drifting, if the methodology is weak, if data access is blocked, or if the original purpose is getting lost, doing nothing is not neutrality, it's poor management. The distinction I use is actually quite simple, right? Intervention protects the integrity of the process. Interference tries to
You're so
shape the
radical.
substance of the finding.
We love it.
So if I challenge weak sampling logic, that's responsible management. If I tell evaluators what conclusions they should reach, that's interference, right? So but let me tell you something. Timing also matters enormously, right? The worst moment to discover a problem is when the draft report lands and everyone realizes that the evaluation answered the wrong question. Good evaluation management creates structure opportunities for course correction at inception, at data collection, around emerging findings, not to control conclusions, but to protect quality and relevance. And
I saw this thing the other day that was talking about evaluations as complex interventions in complex interventions. You know what I mean? So it's like this weirdness squared. But now on this, so Carnival developed a follow-up mechanism that's become something of a reference point internationally, a system for ensuring that evaluation recommendations produce changes in programs rather than just being in reports. Can you walk us through how that mechanism worked back in the day and what it took to get program managers to take it seriously? Because that's really the key thing, right?
Yes, one of the things that I'm proudest of from Carnival is helping institutionalize the idea that the evaluation doesn't end when the report is published, right? Because honestly, many systems confuse production with influence. So let me tell you, before I was an evaluator, I was an implementator, right? And then over there, I start managing evaluations. And it was like, I get all this frustration because you get all this report, you spend all this time in the methodological design. And then when the report lands, nobody knows how to use it. Should I read it? Should I give it to somebody else? Should I do a summary?
Should I ignore it? Should I just
exactly, right? What?
pretend it never
And I have a lot
happened?
to do, right? Beside reading this report, this large report. So we develop a mechanism. I always said that I think in process, right? Step 1, step 2, then what? I always think about that. So when we started like that is what will be the process to use the reports? So we call it, in Spanish it's called el mecanismo de aspectos susceptibles de mejora. I know it's a really long name, but it's trying to differentiate from recommendation.
Say it again. Tell us the name again.
Mecanismo de los aspectos susceptibles de mejora. You see, it's nice, but let me tell you what it means. It means that at first, the first step is to acknowledge that the person that knows more about how to improve a program are the manager programs, right? Because they live it every day. And we as evaluators maybe have a small time
Slice.
to realize a slice, to see what happened. So first what we do over there is to just read the report, read the findings, not only the recommendations, but also the findings, and then said, are these clear? Are they feasible? You know, are they actually going to improve the program? And if that's so, then there are these called aspectos susceptibles de mejora, because there are issues that you can improve, right? And then the second step was, okay, but not everything that can improve the program is on my control as manager, right? So the program manager said, well, I can keep that, but this issue should go to another ministry, or maybe should go to beneficiaries. I don't know, right? So the ones that they are in their control, they put up a action plan. So they become actionable steps to improve, right? But also,
I think
uh-huh,
when South Africa went to visit Mexico, when they were setting up their system, they borrowed this, right? Because they have a very similar mechanism, a performance improvement plan, I think it's called.
oh, we have this thing, but also with the others that they are not in their control, because you cannot tell the Ministry of Finance, you have to be really, you get more efficient to deliver the money. You cannot do that, right? But Coneval could. So Coneval became this microphone to tell other ministries what were the general, issues that prevent the programs to get affected. So this is kind of a follow, but also, and I know that you're going to do me a face, but this mechanism was based on incentives. Why is that? Because because what we want is, to have a real, because we know we have a real challenge. The real challenge is that here what we tried to change was a behavioral thing, not a political thing. We want program managers to actually recognize or acknowledge that there were some findings that could help them to get better, right? So, because program managers often experience evaluation as inspection or judgment, not as a management tool. So,
No, it's punishment.
right? So, in that thing, what we did is that mechanism, if they didn't find any finding or recommendation feasible or good enough, they shouldn't listen to the evaluation. Every year, all programs at least have one aspecto susceptible de mejora.
Which means an item for attention that they are declining to act on, right?
Yes, they actually did some
Can say
action to
no.
improve. Some action
Right.
to improve, right? So what it says in the incentive theory is that they were incentivized to do it because they felt it was useful.
So now let's talk a bit. You and I have joked often about incentives and your obsession with them. And you've written a lot about the role of incentives in getting evaluation findings used. But I think one of the things that's interesting is, and it came up in my conversation with Licia, like one of the major roles of an evaluation office is to encourage people to be interested in evidence and to kind of promote a worldview that is evidence-based and evidence-informed. So if you're really trying to use evaluation as a way of changing people's understanding of the program and get them to buy into whatever the evaluation is finding, and they're not just complying with a requirement, how do evaluators do that? I mean, that's hard to get done, right?
Yes.
What are the incentives? What kinds of things other than an award or something will make for a good incentive?
I think one of a great incentive is to listen. When I find the best results of use of evaluation is when you listen to members. What do they need? When do they need it? And how do they need it? Right?
So you mean the incentive is to be listened to, the program
Yes.
manager for once
Yes.
is being heard. Okay.
Yes, because you and me, we were public officers, and we know that there's no recognition over there, right?
No,
But
nobody cares.
yeah, exactly. Nobody cares. So when somebody came and sit with you, and this will sound very corny and cheesy, but look to your eyes and said, "Okay, tell me about
Tell me.
your daily problems, right? They
Yeah, I
actually
mean, it's difficult
find
because
this
then.
kind more like a consulting instead of an evaluation, you know?
Oh, yeah, like a therapeutic intervention.
Yes.
So now listen, you built evaluation methodologies at Carnival that became benchmarks nationally and even internationally. They were standardized. You mentioned this at the beginning. They were standardized enough to allow comparison across many programs and many studies, but flexible enough to be meaningful for each individual study. How does one design for that tension between standardization and relevance when you're managing a big system at scale?
Of course, this is one of the core tensions of managing evaluations at scale, right? Too
Yeah.
much standardization and evaluation become mechanical exercises that people disengage from. Too much flexibility, and every evaluation becomes so different that you lose comparability and institutional learning. So, what we did in Carnival was modular design. We standardized what needed consistency: quality criteria, reporting structures, core analytical questions, minimum methodological expectations, right? But we preserve flexibility where context matter.
Uh,
From
what about
theory.
like indicators? Good old fashioned indicators,
Yes, of
standard
course.
indicators,
They were flexible, totally flexible.
flexible.
Yes,
Okay.
because implementation realities differ, right? Because sector specific learning questions were so different. And I think I often compare this to architecture. Building codes are standardized, right? But not every
Okay.
building looks the same.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's what
Yeah. Good.
evaluation management should do. It should
Nice
create
analogy.
discipline flexibility.
Nice. Okay. Good. So you've moved from leading at Carnival, an institutional evaluation unit inside government, to consulting independently now with Caribbean Development Bank, the World Bank, the Global Evaluation Initiative. Managing evaluations looks very different from inside an institution than from outside, right? Somebody once said to me when I was a consultant, here we are, and you are over here. What changes when you're outside compared to when you're inside, and what stays the same when you're managing evaluations?
Oof, that's a very tough question because, of course, you have to undertake different activities. But I think that because I was first a manager, although these 2,800, there was a set that we did it, not only manage it, but it was different because we were at Carnival, so it was like different from independent evaluators. Well, not from consultants. So I think right now the thing that challenges most is to focus on the utility, on the usefulness of the evaluation, because for me it's about it. Evaluation is about use. If you don't use it, it's a waste of your time, your money, your brains, even your happiness, right? But
Look, I want to come back to this one because, I think a lot of what we think of when we talk about use, we don't really acknowledge a lot of what use is in evaluation, because I think a lot of the value comes from the exercise of doing it, like people having to clarify their intentions, be more explicit about what leads to what. And so it's not always use that is, what's the Michael Patton term? Instrumental use. It's not always about recommendations. There can be other forms of use, right?
yes, of course. I think actually for me, the most useful issue around the evaluation is the process. You know, be exchanging ideas, have these meetings, listening, but also stating some benchmarks or other type of things is the way that people start changing, not their mindset, but opening to new ideas, right? So I think that one of the things that happen when we are public officers is that sometimes it gets so difficult to do what we have to do that we think that nobody has a better say to it than us, right? So I think when you start generating evaluation, this exchange, personal exchange, is actually the most useful part. Because
When you
for
say
the
personal exchange, you mean between program managers and the evaluators?
exactly, and I know, and the program managers, yes, all these
Right.
type of things, right? Because
Yeah.
what it's like we don't have a lot of time or places in our common days, in our common daily activities, that we stop just to think if we're doing right or not.
No,
And
I
and,
agree.
and the
It's a
evaluation
sacred space.
gives you
Yeah.
this landscape
Yeah.
that people from outside come and said, wait,
Think about
let's
it.
yes, right? So from being a consultant, that's one of the things that I often do. When I'm evaluating, I stop with the people and said, okay, let's think about it.
Do you
Don't
make them do yoga?
I love yoga, but not. But I will. If somebody give me enough openness, I will.
Okay, we'll explore that. So you're co-editing a special issue of the Journal of Multidisciplinary Evaluation on evaluation and the transformational imperative, along with Ian Goldman, Scott Chaplow, and Sonal Zaveri, which is due out quite soon, I think, right? So
Yes.
that's a big intellectual bet. What does evaluation need to become more transformational, not just more rigorous? And what does that mean for how they get managed? And what does that mean for objectivity, neutrality, or whatever those things are that we're supposed to strive for if we are also trying to be transformational?
Well, in order to answer this, we already going to have an issue with 13 articles. So stop being so nosy about it. So let me give you a little bit about it. Let's think about what's transformational imperative. We are in a complex reality, with a lot of problems, right? Climate change, poverty, AI disruption, backlash gender, right? So we have a lot of problems at the same time. So what we are trying to engage is to start thinking and promoting that the evaluators or management, especially managers of the evaluation, should consider this in a more system thing, right? And not only to see the problem just in a vacuum, right? So what we are trying to promote is a serious reflection on how evaluators, management, and users should start thinking around evaluation. And let me tell you just about managers. If a manager is more like a craft maker of the evaluation, right? Because you define the design, you define the time, you define the color, and some artists like the evaluators do that, right? In this transformational, you have to think how it's going to look in the landscape, how it's going to be useful in that landscape, no by itself. So it's going to be a great issue. So
Okay.
please, everybody read it.
Is it available for pre-order or anything yet? Can we link it in the chat, in the show notes?
No, not yet. But what we can link is the JMD website when it's going to be issued.
Okay, cool. So you're also a member of UN Women's Evaluation Advisory Committee, which means that you've been thinking about how gender responsive evaluation gets embedded, not just in methods, but hopefully also in evaluation management processes. Where do most managers not get this right?
One of the most common mistake is treating gender as a technical appendix, right? People think gender responsiveness means adding sex disaggregated indicators at the end. So that's far too superficial. So gender responsiveness starts much earlier. It starts in scope definition, what questions are considered legitimate.
Who's invited to the scoping exercise even, right?
Yes. It continues with team composition also, right? Does the team actually have the capability to analyze gender dynamics well? And stakeholders' engagement matters enormously. Whose voices are included and whose are missing, right? So if affected groups from the process, blind spots are built into the evaluation from the beginning. So I say gender responsive evaluation is not primarily a methodological issue. It's a management discipline.
Well, I think it's more actually. It's kind of
You
even
think?
a sort of, it's a foundational principle, really. It's like, do you want to know this stuff or do you not want to know this stuff? And if you don't want to know this stuff, then you need to face up to the fact that there are questions you're not willing to face, right?
Agreed, but that's one of the responsibilities of the manager, right?
Exactly. Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So I want to just mention a document that I stumbled on while I was preparing for this interview, which is a benchmark review put out by the CGIAR on management response systems to evaluations. It's an interesting document because it basically looks at a number of different management response systems. It's a bit MDB UN agency oriented. So it's like AFDB, GEF, UNITAR, UNDP, those sorts of entities. Not much in the way of country management response systems, which I think we would like to see more of. But we'll link it in the show notes and people can check it out there.
I'm just laughing. I'm just laughing because when you start working on the international landscape, you have to get used to the acronyms, right?
Yeah. Sorry, yes, I'm terrible. I just like, yeah, when I started working at the World Bank, I actually printed out all the acronyms and I would look so bad. Sorry, yes.
No, it's the same for me. But each bank has its own acronym. So
Language.
always do
Yeah.
that. I print the World Bank, I print the IDB, I print the CDB, I print the UNDP. It's like I have, my glossary of acronyms because it's so
terrible.
difficult.
Oh. Okay, but now to wrap up this conversation, which has been really interesting, thank you so much. If a program manager is listening to this, somebody who's been handed responsibility for overseeing an evaluation, but never thought of it as a skill in itself, and they changed one thing after listening to us, what do you want that one thing to be?
Honestly, some of the most instructive experience for me were not successful evaluations. They were technically excellent evaluations that had zero influence. Beautiful methods, sophisticated analysis, strong evidence, and completely unused.
Useless. Yeah.
Right? And those experiences taught me something humbling. Technical excellence is necessary, but it is absolutely not sufficient. Timing matters, ownership matters, institutional pathways matter, and decision windows matter. So if I had to point to one honest lesson, it would be this. Ta-ta-ta-ta-tan. A technical imperfect evaluation that enters a live decision process can have more impact than a brilliant evaluation that nobody feels responsible for using.
Ta-da! That was perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us and have a lovely day.
You too. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.